Hey guys, it is Marcus and Terry here with you today, and we are going to be talking about what are we talking about, Terry? I don't. My notes are trying to pop up here.
We're talking about big mistakes in sobriety.
Yes, big mistakes in sobriety. Don't forget what you're going to talk about on your sobriety talk. That's mistake number one. So, hopefully, everyone's doing good today, staying nice and sober. And if you're not, don't worry. We bounce back from these things. We get better. No matter what goes on in your life, tomorrow's another day. In a minute, it'll be another minute, and everything can change in the course of a couple minutes. And that's the key to remember. So, today, what we're going to do is go over 7 big mistakes when dealing with sobriety. Now, I wrote down 4, and I know I have like more than 7 in my brain, and I know Terry's got some too. So let's go ahead and dive into some of these and get you guys some help with what you need help with, which is staying sober in early sobriety. Now, early sobriety is kind of a difficult time. You're transitioning, you don't have your security blanket, so to speak, and things are just kind of going erratic. Your body's returning to normal. You're learning to live without alcohol, and I know how tough that can be. Terry knows how tough that can be, and we know that there's some things that you can watch out for. There has been lots of studies done about what keeps people sober, what keeps people on the path, and what keeps people going out. And I remember in the beginning of my sobriety when I was in rehab, I was really like a crazy person that ran around the rehab asking everyone how to not relapse because I was terrified. I was scared to death of relapse. And I would ask, hey, what is it that makes people relapse? What is it that stops people from relapsing? And studies show that there are certain things that can stop you and certain things that you can use to, you know, stay sober. So let's go ahead and dive right in. One of the big ones that I noticed, and Terry, if you want to talk about this one as well, is trying to change too much too soon. Like, okay, now that I'm sober, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to make money, I'm going to buy a Bentley, and women are going to love me. And that's what we're going to do, right? Um, I remember for me, I wanted to change everything, right? I was like, okay, this is the miracle. When I quit drinking, then everything's going to change. But I found the opposite to be true. In early sobriety, I was like, okay, like right now, I just don't want to drink. Like that's some days, sometimes getting through the day not drinking is a win, right? Even if your day sucks, just getting through it not drinking is a win because, hey, what did you used to do when days sucked? Well, you'd be at the bar or you'd be face down somewhere, passed out because you didn't know how to deal with it. So to me, I consider that a win if I can make it through a rough day, not drinking. What do you think about that, Terry? Did you try to change too much right into sobriety, or what did that look like for you?
Absolutely. I thought exactly the same thing. I'm gonna become successful and buy that Bentley. I don't know if I'd buy a Bentley, but yeah, I thought everything was going to change all at once. And the most important thing to avoid when you stop drinking is don't drink. That is the very first thing. But overcommitting is a huge thing to. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. I just took on this last couple of weeks something a big thing, and I realized I've overcommitted, and I'm gonna have to back off a little bit.
Mhm.
And it's huge.
Yeah.
There's many more than 7 big mistakes that
Mhm.
that I think I listed like 14 or something like
All
that.
right,
But
we'll go through them all. We'll,
but
we'll give them bonuses, and you guys don't
yeah,
have to
that's
pay
right. We'll give
extras
you
for the extras.
bonus mistakes, but the main thing is do whatever you can to not drink.
Yeah.
And maybe you're going to make a mistake. Maybe you are going to take that drink, and it's not okay for me to take a drink, but it's okay to just start not drinking again.
Mhm.
That's the important thing.
Yeah. And that's a big thing is like the first thing you got to do is focus on not drinking because if you try to do too much, remember you're still trying to do too much with an old mindset. My new mindset, the way that it is today, didn't really start kicking in until about 9 months or a year sober. And it was deliberate. Like I deliberately put these thoughts in my brain by listening to different talks. So for someone that's out there just trying to stay sober and not putting new thoughts in their brain, not putting new things, it's going to be very difficult. And sometimes, even now, even with my new thoughts, sometimes I'm like, well, screw it. Today, I'm just not going to drink. That's my goal for the day. I'm not going to, focus on getting everything done at work. I'm not going to focus on this. I'm just going to focus on staying sober. And that is a big deal. I know it sounds simple, It sounds silly. It's like, oh, what's the key to not drinking? Well, not drinking. Well, thanks, Marcus. How many PhDs did you need to figure that one out? Well, it's easier said than done because we all know that we have this issue. We all know we can quit, but we keep going back, and it's almost like we're on autopilot. And so we have to fight that, right? Because while we know something, we have to fight it because we programmed our brain to desire it, to want it, to need it, and to feel like, hey, that's the only thing we can do is go drink to solve our problem.
Right.
And I'm sure if you guys are watching us, you have found that drinking does not solve the problem or any problem. Really doesn't. It makes it worse. And so that's one of the things. So, number one, I think, is changing too much too soon. What do you got on your list there, Terry?
Well, there's a couple of, when I first got sober, there was a bunch of things that I felt I had to do. And, my attitude was I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay sober, to not drink. So I made sure that I was going to avoid the temptations because I really didn't know what was going to make me drink or what was going to tempt me to drink. I just had no idea.
Yeah.
So one of them would be hanging out with those old friends,
Hmm.
or and to go along with that, not going to the bars.
I
And
would I would even add to that returning to old patterns.
yeah,
Because a lot of times they say relapse happens in the mind before it actually happens. And you can
absolutely.
see that happen where your thought process returns. And I was even talking to this with my youngest daughter. She's away on a trip out of the country, and she's not like the super like, hey, let's just go out of the country kind of person. She kind of gets a little worried, and she had a lot of stressors going into it. And I was talking to her about when you get the feelings, when you get overwhelmed, when you get panic and stuff like that, I want you to notice how your body is responding, and you're probably hunched over, and you feel bad, and you're going internal, and you're thinking about it, and that to her is returning to an old pattern. That's a pattern that starts it, and I guarantee if you do that enough, if you made her sit like that for an hour straight, she'd probably go back into those feelings, even though the thoughts aren't provoking it, or even though nothing external has changed, because it's that old pattern, and old patterns will keep you stuck. Sorry, I interrupted you, Terry, but
No,
go
no,
ahead.
you're good. What you said was right on the money. And another one is you quit drinking. Like I quit drinking, and I got through the detox and all that. And then there's this tendency to feel that I'm cured, I'm good, my mind is clear. Well, it wasn't
Mhm.
so clear right away, but it after a few months, it was my mind was coming back. I was feeling better physically, and thinking you're cured.
Yeah,
And as years go by in sobriety, what happens to many of us is we start to get our lives back. People start to come back into our lives that maybe we had hurt before, and we think everything's okay.
mhm.
And then maybe something happens, and we think that drink is okay as well. So
Yeah.
thinking we're cured is another pretty big one.
I
And
would uh, I would also add to that the idea of overconfidence,
yeah,
because overconfidence in early sobriety, like for me, I'm confident, I'm arrogant sometimes, probably a lot of times, and I often miscalculate what I can do or what I
right,
can't do. Like I like in the back of my head somewhere, there's this thought that it's like, hey, yeah, you'd probably be fine. Like you could go, you can drink. Like tonight, we're going since the kids are away, we're going to a nice French restaurant tonight, and there'll be wine there, and it'll practically be like, hey, do you want to taste it? Are you sure? Here it is. It's free. Hey, have it. And there's that thought in your mind that's like, hey, I could probably do that. Probably be all right. You know, and I might be, but who wants to figure it out? And it goes back to this study that I read about called the hot hand syndrome. And the hot hand syndrome is in basketball, not to be referring to any other hot hand syndrome. But in basketball, you would have someone and they make a shot and they make another shot and they make three in a row. And you ask them, you're like, hey, I'll bet you $1 million you missed the next shot. And I guarantee, even if it's a difficult shot, he's going to bet it because they have that symptom of, hey, I made three in a row. I'm unstoppable. I'm ready to go. And the same thing happens in sobriety, where you're like, hey, you know what? I got 3 weeks under my belt. I'm good. You feel good. I mean, you are used to feeling like shit. Like when you drink and you drink in excess, you feel like shit all the time. You just don't know it because shit is now the new normal, right?
Yeah.
You're like, hey, yeah, that's what we do. We just feel like shit. I'm a fat slob. I don't shower till noon, and that's just life. That's the way it is. And so when you get sober and you're like, hey, I'm up at 6 a.m. and twiddling my thumbs. What am I gonna do? I'm showered. I'm in a 3-piece suit. I feel great. And you don't realize, hey, this is how normal people feel all the time. And you get that hot hand syndrome of, hey, you know what? Nothing would make me feel better than feeling normal than a drink. And it's like, no, that's not true. That's not going to happen. That's going to send you back. And those are those old thoughts creeping in. And the key for me is to realize them. Realize, hey, you know what? These thoughts are going to go by. Like a lot of people come to me and they feel bad because they think about drinking. My daughter was talking about feeling bad because she was thinking about a certain topic. And it's like, well, you don't need to feel bad about it
Right.
because that's what happens, right? You look at two people that are in love and you start on like January and you're like, okay, I just met this person and now my thoughts are consumed with this person. Like 2 weeks ago, I didn't even know they existed and now I can't stop thinking about them. And so you go through and you think about them over and over. Come March, you guys break up or whatever, and it's like, why am I still thinking about them? Well, because you consume your thoughts for 90 days about this person. It's totally normal. And what I like to do is I like to look at thoughts as a river, right? Your thoughts are going by, they're the river, right? You watch the news. Like, I guarantee you're thinking about Donald Trump way more than you think you need to be. Like, I know I am. I went through my entire life and I'm like, I don't even care about this guy. And now I'm thinking about him. I'm like, oh, God, what that, you know, guy do? I'm going to use the word guy. What'd that guy do this time? And I'm thinking about it and it's like, well, of course I am because it's in the limelight, it's in the spotlight. But the thoughts are there in the river anyway, and you choose what to pick up. You choose what to dwell on. And remember that. Like, hey, that's normal. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to have these thoughts. And I think that's why watching these kind of talks and listening to other people in sobriety is so important because you're going to realize, hey, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. Terry thought about drinking too. Marcus thought about drinking too. These people think about this stuff, and we're nothing special. We're just two guys that like to talk a lot, and so we made a show. Well, I know I like to talk a lot, but that there's no difference. Like your thoughts are like our thoughts. So yeah, that's a good one too. Though overconfidence is a killer.
Okay, here's another one.
All right.
This one's kind of big. Well, it was big for me, especially after I was like sober about a year or so. And that's thinking that our loved ones or even our friends, um, they should trust us. And just because we're sober now.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember my wife asked me, I was about a year sober, and she said, "Are you drinking again?" I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" And of course, I get defensive. I hadn't been drinking again, but that natural defense just kicks in. And so I look even more guilty. And what it was is all I did was I had blocked um, under the house with some boxes. And that's where I used to hide my booze.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't even cross my mind as to why she would think that, but that was her thought.
Yeah.
And she that's what happens. We don't get our trust back right away. We have to earn our trust, and
Mm-hmm.
that's by doing the right thing day after day and just showing that we're sober. And that's that will eventually it'll come through. But every once in a while, um, my wife may wonder, "Are you thinking about a drink?" Or, "So, are you okay?" And
Mm-hmm.
and I just have to accept that and understand that I was an alcoholic. I lied for years and years
Mm-hmm.
about drinking, and that trust doesn't just come back automatically.
And it goes both ways. So, like, while you have been programming your mind to think about drinking, they've been programming your mind to be on the defensive of, hey, you know what? I don't want this guy to drink. And
Yeah,
so these thoughts are going to come up. And I think the key is to remember that, hey, you're sober, and it doesn't matter who knows you're sober but you. Right? It doesn't matter. Like if someone thinks I'm drinking, that's fine. I remember early in sobriety, one of my customers like wrote some nasty thing on my other business, And she's like, I know Marcus is drinking again. And I'm sitting here like, what the fuck, man? I worked my ass off to not drink. And here is this person who, like, scammed me out a bunch of money and just like crazy. Like, she got refunds and kept her sites and everything, which was already like a thorn in the side. And then she's telling me I'm drinking because she thinks I'm talking weird. And it's like, well, anyone who knows me knows I always talk weird. If I stop talking, then you should probably worry about me. But that's kind of the thing to look at is like, hey, you know what? They've been programmed the way that you've been programmed, just in the opposite. And it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is that I know I'm sober. And I think a lot of times what gets people going back is pride and ego. Because it's easy to say, you know what? Wife, spouse, whoever, F you. If you think I'm drinking, I'm going to go drink anyway. I might as well enjoy it. Everyone thinks it anyway.
Right.
And that's the way that our minds work. And I think sometimes we need to just stop and laugh at our mind and be like,
Yeah.
whatever, there it is. Like for me, I know I come from a family where we do movie quotes, and I can movie quote just about any situation and make people laugh. Why? Because I was programmed to do that, and I like it. And I got a little jolt when it was like, hey, I made everyone laugh. Cool. And so my system's always like, let's make people laugh. If someone's sad, make them laugh. And it's just natural. It's just what we go through. And don't worry about that. If other people don't think you're sober, just know that you are. And know that that's the goal, is knowing you're sober. And don't get in arguments. Say, hey, you know what? Yeah, sometimes I do think about taking a drink, but I didn't today. Or if you did, yeah, I did. Okay, well, let's get you some help. Because really, most people just want you to help. They just want to help you. So, yeah, that's what I find.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Another one, worrying about the future, or for that matter, worrying about the past. And I'm not saying uh, to not worry about the future and the past, but live in today. And you hear that in the 12-step rooms all the time is don't drink one day at a time, and that's just focus on what you're doing right now. Yeah, you may have legal issues or something bad coming up, and of course, how could you not worry about those things? But really try to focus on what you're doing today, and that's not drinking. And that helps me a lot as
Mm-hmm.
far as what I've had to go through,
Yeah.
and it's gotten me through the difficult situations sober.
Mm-hmm.
And you just with the difficult situations that I have coming up, I just figure out what's the little thing I can do today towards that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's been successful for me so far.
Yep. And for everyone hopping on, I see we got Meg, we got Yellow, we got 420 Forever, we got Susan, Real Talk Recovery, James, Armand, and Linda, Vera. A lot of people on here. We will get to your questions in a minute. We want you to know we're not ignoring you or anything. The way we do our presentation is usually about 30 minutes of us going on a topic, and then we get to your questions and stuff. But we appreciate you being there, and we will be getting to them, and we are reading them as we talk, which makes us seem distracted, but you gotta read them. They're there, you gotta read them. So,
Yep.
cool stuff. All right, cool. Another one, let's see. One that I had was comparing yourself to others.
Yeah, that's on my
That's
list. Yes.
that's a big one. In our Instagram, Facebook day and age, it's damn near impossible to not compare yourself to others.
Right.
And I know a lot of people talk about, well, the social media is the highlight reel, and it's like the Christmas letter, right? And I always have this joke with my wife. I'm like, if we have a bad year, I want to write a Christmas letter that's like, let's make everyone feel good by saying, hey, you know what? This year sucked. I made a bad business decision, and this happened, and whatever, and blah, blah, blah. Because, real life is different than the highlight reel. Real life is different than the Christmas letter. And if you're comparing yourself to others, first of all, there's no real reason to. Unless you're a marathon swimmer or an athlete and you're competing, there's no reason to compare, right? Be happy with what you have. And I learned that usually by being happy with what you have, your situation gets better. And even if it doesn't, you feel better about it. And you can compare. I could sit here as a business person and be like, well, that guy makes this much. This guy does that. Well, that sobriety guy is traveling the world talking about this stuff. And I'm sitting in my backyard office. I should be traveling the world or whatever it is. And comparing yourself is a big thing to look at, especially when you go into sobriety and it's like, well, that guy's got 18 years sobriety. I got 4 days. A little
Right.
intimidating. But it's not really. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have 1 day or a million years. What matters is I'm sober today. And I think that's the important one. Do you have anything to
So,
add on that one?
no, you covered it real well. But I think another important one is thinking you can do this alone.
Mm,
That's a huge one for me.
me too.
One of the reasons I do this webinar is because I get to see other people's perspectives, and I try to stay open minded with what other. I don't have all the answers. I've
Mm-hmm.
been sober for a little while, but I learn new stuff about sobriety every day, and I learn new things that other people are going through that
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even looked at that perspective,
Yeah.
and that's an important one, and that it doesn't so much go along with comparing myself to others, but it makes me able to empathize as to what other people are going through.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, thinking that I can do this alone is isolating.
Yeah.
And once again, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which was now I forgot. But anyways, but isolated. Oh, getting back into your old bad habits,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I did. Is I isolated to drink because I didn't want anybody to know that I was drinking 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another big one. But comparing myself to others, geez, I'm guilty of that all the time. On scroll through Facebook and man, this guy's doing this guy's doing that. How come I'm not that great? And
Mm-hmm.
they have their problems just like I do,
Yeah.
and it's okay.
Well, and it's like a society that's built on no one talking about truth. It's like a society that's built on, hey, I'm gonna project what I want you to see, instead of just being like, you know what, yeah. And for me, it was big because I was one of those people who could never be wrong. I was a preacher, I could never be wrong. Business never could be wrong. And in sobriety, I really learned that, hey, you know what? I'm just me. I can be wrong. Like I don't have all the answers. Like I'm here. We do the sober talk, and by nature of the way our society's made, is like, well, Marcus and Terry have figured it out. And it's like, well, I figured out how not to drink today, and ask me tomorrow, I might have a totally different answer. And hopefully, one of the answers will help you guys too. And that's the thing is like, get in a group, talk to someone. If the sponsor thing seems like something you guys want to do, go for it. That I know it's worked for a lot of people. I think Terry, you do sponsor stuff, don't you? Like you
I do.
had one and stuff like that. And it's a good idea. Like if I didn't have other people to talk to, like Terry has been a big help in my sobriety because it's like, hey, there's someone to talk to. We
Right.
went through rehab together. It's like, dude, today freaking sucked. Don't know what to do. And he'd be like, hey, yeah, well, don't drink. And I'm like, that's good. I know I could have told myself that, but coming from him, it's way different. And don't isolate. Reach out to someone. Come on here. Tell us what you're going through in the comments. Reach out to us on the site. Actually, if you guys are interested, I was toying with the idea yesterday of opening up our little social network that I paid a bunch of money to build on the site. If you guys are interested in that, let me know, and I'll have my programmer fix what I messed up so it works again. And it has like a live chat. You guys can talk to each other. Sometimes me and Terry will pop in there if we're hanging out and not doing nothing. Sometimes other people will be in there, and you can post things. And if you find a helpful video, post it or whatever it is. And maybe it'll help you. So if you guys want that, just type in social in the box, and I will reactivate that, and we'll have it at talksober.com/1, I think is where it's at. It's not there now, but by the time you're watching the replay, it'll probably be up if everyone wants it. But I think that'll be a help. And for me in early sobriety, I did reach out in online communities. I also went to the 90 meetings in 90 days because they told me, hey, do that, and it was a help. Even though I was anxious and crazy, it was a help. So, very cool stuff.
And that's important. Some people are talking about AA, and they're talking about let's see, I forgot where it was. I'm trying to scroll back up. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
Vera Vladi talked about going to Unity, and it's really not a church. And all that, and that's I think
Mhm.
whatever anybody decides to do is awesome.
It
Whether
gets you out of
you're
your head.
Yeah,
Get
whether
out of
you're a
there.
believer, you're an atheist,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter. You can get sober. Whatever your beliefs are, you don't have to change your beliefs.
Mhm.
You just, for me, what I did is I just stayed as open-minded as I could, and I tried not to criticize anybody for whatever they did for their sobriety, and I just tried to stay open-minded and figure out what was going to work for me, and that's what I eventually did, and I still try to stay open-minded, and if I have to, if I my beliefs change, that's okay. It's just something that I don't worry about.
Yeah.
And so for all of you and your different opinions on what works, that's awesome. Somebody mentioned Buddhism and from a scientific way. Let's see, that's down here towards the end here. Jay Walker. Oh, good to see you again, Jay. That the Buddhist that explains meditation in a scientific way. It helps with sobriety and other things in life. And yeah, I know a lot of people that use meditation. And I don't sit down and quietly and meditate, but I do walk my dog for an hour every morning, and where I walk is very quiet and serene, and it makes me feel good.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because for me, my beliefs completely changed in sobriety. I was an uptight, uh, Bible-y preacher guy. Not that everyone who preaches the Bible is uptight. I just happen to be really uptight. And I was right, and I had all the answers and everything like that. And when I got sober, it was like, well, I really don't know anything because everything I thought and figured out up till now, all my great ideas have brought me to a mental institute and unable to stop drinking. So that's where all that brought me. And I kind of had to rethink things and be like, okay, let's rethink things. Let's say, what if I could be wrong? And that was a game changer because it's like now I can always be wrong. I don't know, right? I have no idea. I've never been up in the sky that far to see what's out there. Kind of terrified if I ever did get out there that far, but you know we don't know. And look to what works for you and what makes you feel good and what makes you stay sober. And I find that that's helpful. If that's church, that's good. For me, church is an anxiety provoking type place. You could watch my other videos about that. I have several of them, and you'll find out why it's anxiety provoking. Um, and you'll learn a lot about that. But figure out what's going to work for you. If something's anxiety provoking, if you know for a fact that like your grandma went to AA like mine did and you're anxious about AA because of a traumatic event, maybe try something else. Right? Just saying. If church, maybe you got trauma around church, maybe try something else. Because you don't want to stoke the fire of the feelings. And I find that like sometimes things are counterintuitive. We live in a society where it's like deal with the problem, face that problem head on. And it's like sometimes, like I had all these problems I was facing head on and dealing with while I was drinking, and they kept me drunk. And then in sobriety, I was kind of like, well, it's quiet right now, so I think we'll be okay. Like some of the issues are like, well, hey, you know what? If it shuts up, we're good. Um, and I find that's good. And maybe some people will say, hey, that's running from stuff or whatever. But I'm not really running. I'm just like, hey, it's dormant right now. When it comes up, we'll deal with it. When it doesn't, I won't, kind of thing. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Terry? It could be good advice or bad advice, but kind of works for me. So
I think you hit the nail on the head.
all right, cool.
Right on. I wanted to say, Nanu, you said you're 9 days sober, and congratulations to everybody on putting how
Hmm.
much how long you've been sober. That's awesome.
Even if it's an
Nanu,
hour.
you said it might not be much, but it's a start. No, 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 no. 9 days is awesome.
Yep.
Good job.
Yep.
Don't undercut yourself. 9 days is huge. Those first 9 days were probably the most difficult. So
Yep.
good job.
Awesome. Cool deal. All right. Yeah. Let's see. How many did we get through? Like 8 or something. I haven't been counting.
Yeah, so we're just a little bit over 8.
Okay.
Let's see. There was one here that I wanted to talk about a little bit. Expecting your loved ones to change. I know we kind of touched on that, but one thing we've talked about before in our webinars is when so for me when I was drinking, I my bar was low,
Mhm.
And so when I stop drinking, I have to remember that I just came back up to being normal. Instead of I'm this high and mighty person that doesn't drink anymore. No, 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 no. I'm just back to maybe I'm back to a regular person in society,
Mhm.
and that I can contribute just like everybody else. I'm no better, and I don't think I'm any worse. But
Mhm.
that's it. And that along the lines with the expecting my loved ones to think that I'm this great person. No, I'm back to where they expected me to be. So
Mhm.
now I need to be part of the family or part of my with my friends. I just need to be there and do the best I can, and that's a big one for me.
I think that
Uh,
also goes with our society's need to praise mediocrity. It's like sometimes there's something mediocre, and it's like whatever. Like I used to think that I was some high and mighty guy because I made money on the internet. And it's like, so whatever. That's your job. Like one guy, paves highways. Another guy picks up cones. I do the internet. Another guy is a priest. It doesn't matter. You just do what you do. And that's not to say don't, be proud of yourself for not drinking. Like that's a big accomplishment. That's great. But again, don't put it in perspective, like Terry did. Hey, I'm back to normal, right? Don't go
yeah,
in there and be like, I hear ye, and henceforth have 90 days sober, and everyone should act like I am, the god of earth. And it's like, no, you're 90 days sober, so you didn't drink. Good. Next, right? And that's one of the things that I found important is next or and. Right? I did this. Yeah, and okay, good. Maybe not good. It's like that story of the horse guy where he's like, "Hey man, your horse came back with a new horse. Yay, good." And he's like, "Maybe it's good, maybe it's not." And then the horse runs away, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's terrible. Maybe it's terrible, maybe it's not." And all these things happen, and it's like, maybe it's good, maybe it's not. I don't know. I have no idea, and I can't even get hair off my eye. That's how bad it is. But we have no idea what's going to go on. We have no idea what tomorrow holds. Uh,
that's right.
but I know right now I can drink coffee instead of alcohol. I know
Yeah,
that. I know I can have a cigar. Some people are like, "Oh, you shouldn't have a cigar." It's like, well, maybe I'll quit that one day in its own time. But hey, right now, better than a drink, or whatever it is. Um, so yeah.
that's right. So if we go back up to the beginning of the comments, just a
Hmm.
couple that I wanted to talk about. Let's see. So 420 forever, and you have 8 days sober now. It's good to see you again.
Hmm.
After your relapse, you were sober for 36 days, and that's it. You said, but not giving up. That's
Hmm.
it. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Keep trying. Keep coming here. Do whatever you can do.
Hmm.
If maybe you need to step up your work on sobriety. I don't know. I don't know what you're doing now, but think about what you were doing, and man, you can think about what made you drink. But really, for me, when I started drinking after a month sober, which yeah, I had just about the same amount of time as you. There wasn't any particular thing that made me start drinking again. I just wanted to drink, and then I acted on it. So maybe what I didn't do was I didn't pause for that 15 minutes or a half an hour and try and do something else. I just went and acted and got the bottle and had that drink, and I was off to the races again.
Hmm.
So that's something that's a good tool to use is that pause.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
let's see.
Yellow's got a funny one. He says, "Why do I have serial killer interviews in the suggested feed when I watch Marcus's channels?" Well, probably because we talk about mental illness sometimes, and those go hand in hand. But the way that the algorithm of the YouTube works is it watches what you watch and it tries to predict what you're going to want next, which is a lot like the way the alcoholic or regular brain works. Right? It's going to watch what's going on and it's going to try to predict what's going next. Like if you start thinking about things, other things are going to come in. Our brains are incredibly powerful and they are looking for connections. Like your brain is like the YouTube machine, it is constantly looking for patterns. Constantly. That's why people see faces in the hills. Like I go look at a mountain and I'm like, hey, that looks like, Homer Simpson. And everyone else is like, yeah, you're nuts. And I'm like, well, no, look, there it is. And they're like, oh yeah, but you're still nuts. That's what's happening is your brain's looking for patterns and your brain looks for solutions. And sometimes a solution will be, hey, let's go get hosed because getting hosed means I don't have to deal with the feelings that I don't want to deal with. And your brain's going to constantly look at that. And I have been blessed slash cursed with a very fast moving brain. And I think of things very quick. I put things together really quick. And sometimes it's good in the business sense. Sometimes it's bad when I'm in the alcohol sense because it could lead you down rabbit holes and you'll be like, how did I get here? But that's how you get there. There's an algorithm in your brain, just like there's an algorithm in the YouTube, and it's constantly looking for patterns and solutions and ways out and shortcuts. And that's kind of how things work. And then when a shortcut happens, like you get a shortcut, it's going to say, hey, this is what you like. So, like the YouTube algorithm is going to be like, well, I think, yellow is going to want these videos. And your brain's going to say, well, I think the best shortcut is to go drink because you've used it so many times and it seemingly worked, but you forget that you feel like shit. So you got to hijack that and change the algorithm or use a different algorithm in your mind. So that's enough computer talk. But I thought that was wise. So
Well, I thought you
I'm going to
turned
sit and
that
feel wise.
really good towards sobriety. Good job.
Cool.
Real Talk Recovery. Hello, good to see you. If you're still here, you said it always tells me I will be all right, but I know without a shadow of a doubt that I cannot drink. And amen to that.
Mhm.
I can't drink either.
Yep.
Definitely.
Me neither.
Further on, you wrote, you said, it is the lie the disease tells us.
Mhm.
And yes, definitely. But it's I drank for so many years. My mind has developed these pathways, like Marcus was talking about, that leads me towards that drink, and that's why I have to continue to try to do different things and that are not those same old patterns, like isolating and hanging out with the old friends and some of the big mistakes that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to do daily throughout my day. Um, Linda Marshall, you're on day 4, no alcohol, feeling unwell today, went to group today, trying to keep it going. Good job, Linda. 4 days is big as well. That's awesome. And yeah, if
Some bit.
groups are helping you,
Yep.
feeling bad after 4 days of not drinking, that's definitely common.
Hmm.
But if you're not feeling good, it might be a good idea to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
If any of you are feeling that way, you should see a doctor. Detox from alcohol is dangerous and it can be fatal. And
Yep.
it was almost fatal for me. That put me in the hospital in a coma for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So this is not something you guys need to mess around with. It's if you're feeling at all bad at all from coming off alcohol, go
Yep.
to the doctor.
Yep. And tell them what you've been going through. That way, if they do prescribe something, they'll know, hey, well, let's give them the non addictive version of it. Because, that would be terrible if you switch from something to another thing. And that's probably another thing that would add to the list of sobriety mess ups or mistakes is switching one thing for another. Like maybe someone will get like super overly religious, which is okay. Like that's cool. But just watch it. Make sure that it's not a new addiction. Maybe they'll get into something else. Workout. Some people like have an unhealthy relationship with workout where it's like, hey, you don't need muscles on your eyelids. You're good. Just watch it. Take everything in moderation. Take everything in stride. See a doctor when you need to. I went to a doctor because we got heart stuff in the family, and I knew sitting around for 3 years and not exercising was probably not the best thing. And he's like, go to the gym, don't drink so much soda, and stop the cigars. I did down to like one cigar a day or like two a week. I have my pipe most of the time. And I go work out and I start to feel better. But going to see them, they're going to give you the advice because they know medical stuff. I don't.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know the medical side of alcohol. I just know the mental stuff. And, don't mess with it. Don't ever mess with health stuff because you can't get your health back. You can get everything back in life but your health. And alcohol wreaks freaking havoc on your health, like serious havoc. So be careful with that. All right.
Yep.
Let's
James,
see.
let me answer James.
Hmm.
James said, I want to find somewhere to belong as an atheist. I can't do the local meetings or churches, but I need to be part of something. I went to the 12-step meetings, and I understand lots of people don't want to do them. They can't do them. The other thing I did was I went to the early recovery meetings at my hospital. And I'd be willing to bet that most hospitals had these early recovery meetings, and they were great.
And
They were, yeah, go ahead.
James belongs here.
Yeah,
Y'all belong
exactly.
here. We're all, we're all just people going through it, trying to figure stuff out. And y'all belong here. I know we only do once a week. Maybe we'll do more. I don't know, depending on time. But you guys all belong here, and that's the deal. You belong in. If you belong in this group, you'll probably belong in just about any sobriety group. Just
Yep.
remember that in every group, there's people going through stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you can't expect to take 50 alcoholics, put them in a room, and not have some kind of issues of pride or ego or whatever. Like, that would
Right.
be a miracle. You can't take people who have dealt with all kinds of things, give them a Bible, and expect them to be completely perfect. You're gonna have issues. You can't expect people to um, go to a Tony Robbins meeting and be all cured or whatever. We're going to these things because we need help, right? And that doesn't mean we're any less than
Right.
others. We just have a problem and we're like, hey, I need help with this, which is fine. Somewhere along the way, needing help became a sign of weakness, and it's really not. We wouldn't be here without help. There's government help, there's financial help, there's spiritual help. Why can't there be help for an alcoholic? And lucky for us, there is. So,
And those 12-step meetings, one way I look at them, or 12-step meetings, or the hospital meeting, or whatever,
mhm,
um, I look at them as learning experiences. Not only do I hear other people's experiences and what they went through, and maybe that can show me what not to do or what to do, but some people say the same thing over and over again, and I used to just get so frustrated. It's like, why is this person still talking? They just said this yesterday or last week or whatever. And, you know, if I look at my drinking, I started drinking at a very young age. I drank for decades. Part of me didn't mature. I still have things that I'm learning how to deal with in life as far as emotionally because I don't feel I matured in certain ways.
mhm,
And so these meetings, listening to that person I don't want to listen to, it teaches me patience. And that's the way I look at it. Is I'm just,
yep.
okay, this person's saying the same thing. Maybe it's helping them. And there you go. I'm just learning these little life lessons that help me cope with the rest of the real world.
I also look at what is it in my own life that's the same way.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee there's people who think I repeat myself all the time. I guarantee if you look at my mind, it's repeating itself. It's the same thing. I'm just not audibly doing it. And I think if we look at it, there's a good verse if you like Bible stuff that talks about removing the speck from your own eye before you take the plank, or no, the plank out of your eye before you take the speck out of someone else's. And it's interesting because we look at it, and in everything I do, like if you guys have kids, you'll notice this as well. You have kids, and sometimes they drive you nuts with like tedious little things they want to talk about all the time. And oftentimes I'll be like, well, am I not the same? Do I not do the same thing? I just have, I'm just called a grown up, apparently. And that's the only difference. But oftentimes we do the same things. Oftentimes you can look at it and you can turn the mirror around on yourself and be like, hey, yeah, I am just like that person. But sometimes you'll go to a meeting and you'll be like, yeah, not really like that guy. That's cool. Whatever. And you can thank them for making you feel a little better about yourself, right? But don't audibly thank them. That would be being an ass. But look at everything in stride and take it and say, hey, how am I like this? Because you probably are. We're all just humans going through our stuff. Some deal with it different ways, and you know, listen, because you might hear something that'll change you,
That's
which is
right.
cool. So yeah,
So Den Haro had mentioned you want to get sober, and well, you were talking to what was your name, Vera, and you want to get sober and living in Russia, right? You'd be like a Muslim in Israel. And you know what? I'm Now I don't know anybody from Russia that's trying to get sober, staying sober, but I know somebody that I just met him the other day. They're visiting from Puerto Vallarta. Okay, now if you want to talk drinking, isn't that pretty much what everybody does when they go to Puerto Vallarta? This person's living in Puerto Vallarta and they don't drink.
hmm
You can get sober anywhere. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
And
Well,
so
and
don't,
there's sober people everywhere. Like
yeah,
kids don't
good,
drink usually.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's sober people everywhere. I guarantee there's sober groups in Russia. I guarantee there's sober groups in Rhode Island, anywhere. And you got to look at it. Like I just found out that apparently India has a very big drinking culture, which I didn't think they did. I never go to the Indian restaurant and see anything other than beer, so maybe they're beer people. But it doesn't matter where you're at, and it doesn't matter what label you put on things, and it doesn't matter what other people are doing. It matters what I'm doing. And I know for me, yeah, drinking ain't a good idea. Um, so yeah, I would look at that. But yeah, and for me, it'd be easy because Russia likes vodka, and I detested vodka. So maybe it'd be a little easier. So who knows?
I
But yeah,
loved it.
I never did. Yeah,
All the way to the end.
people would try to give me really fancy, like, oh no, this is made from potatoes in the Alps. And I'd be like, it still
Right.
tastes like shit to me. And that's one of the biggest mixing ones. You never see someone like having a straight up vodka. That'd be just weird. Um,
Really?
did you have
It
it straight
wasn't
up?
for me.
I did have it straight up towards the end. The only reason I like vodka is because it was easy to hide. I was like, yeah, no, that's water. I'm just walking sideways because I got one shoe on. That's water.
Yes.
Um, but yeah,
We're laughing about it, but we're romanticizing it. And
yeah,
no, the alcohol's not for me. And
nope.
yeah, that's one of the things though that I have to remember is that I liked. It didn't matter, vodka, whatever. I liked it till the very end.
Mm,
And a lot of people you hear that it worked until it didn't work. No, it worked for me until the end.
mhm.
But it almost, well, I guess it didn't work because it almost killed me. But
Well, and it worked as your baseline changed.
yes,
So it was like, yeah, it worked. But if I looked at Terry, 5 years before he got heavy drinking, and looked at him now, I'd be like, well, is alcohol working? Well, yeah, it makes me feel better. Well, do you ever feel like you did 5 years ago? No, I feel like shit all the time. So,
right,
it's like cold medicine. It's like I take it when I have a cold. And like I know I feel like shit when I take the cold medicine, but it's because my baseline has changed. I wouldn't take it if I was normal. I know some weird people who take cold medicine before they get a cold, and it's like, no, take vitamins before you get a cold, not cold medicine. Um, but to each his own.
right.
All right, let's take a
So,
couple others here. Yeah, go for it.
okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Linda says, my group is not religious. It's called Reach. It's a charity run group too. You know what I like? I like what you say right here. And I am very well known in my area, but I don't care what people think. It's about me now. Well, you said no, but now.
Mhm.
And, for me, I can't help it. I care what other people think.
Me
It's what
too.
happens. It's just natural. But at the same time, I realize that I can't change what people think about me,
Yep.
and so I try not to let it affect my life, and I just try to be the best person I can be, and that's all I can do. And
Yeah.
yes, I care, and it does affect me, but I try not to let it affect my life, and that's the best I can do. But
And
that's
if you
go
care
ahead.
what
Yeah.
people think, don't start a YouTube channel because sometimes I'll be going through a normal day and I'll feel fine. And it's interesting because like I get more hate messages on this alcohol channel than I do on my money making channel. And I would think, okay, the money making people are going to be way worse. These alcohol people are going to be not. But no, it's the exact opposite. And sometimes
Yeah.
I'll have a normal day and I'll read a comment and I'm like, man, that made me feel like crap.
Yeah.
Because it's human nature to care what people think. So yeah, if you're one of those who can't handle what people think, maybe don't do an internet business or YouTube or something because people are a little too honest on those or a
You
little
know,
too.
it still bothers me that we're the kings of bad audio, but
Yeah,
you know what? It's okay. And
yep.
if the Mr. Bad Audio wants to come over and teach me how to get good audio, that'd be awesome. That
That
would be
that would be my bad. That is 100% my bad. A lot of people also they comment they're like Marcus isn't paying attention. He's always looking around. But if you looked at it, I have my screen here with the program that runs the deal. It's got the audio, and I try to match them up. And then I have the comments here. I got Terry here, and then I have a replay over here and something over here. So that's why I'm always looking around. But to each his own. So,
you're doing a good job.
there we go. Yeah, let's take a couple others here. Where did we leave off?
Well, I'm down to Katie says that day 230 sober here, all praise
Awesome.
to the Most High.
Cool.
Good job, Katie. That's awesome. That's that's a big step. You pass that 6 months. What's that? Is that 9 months? Whatever. It doesn't matter. You're sober today. That's great. Good
V-
job.
Vera has a funny one. She says, I got into AA in Houston, where I live. Got into AA in Moscow. It was very tough, no humor. Now, I'm the kind of person who finds humor in no humor. So I'd be like the guy in the corner cracking up about everything, and they'd be like, dude's got to be drunk. I'm like, no, I'm not. I just find no humor funny. But yeah, find something that works for you. If, strict no humor doesn't work, then find a funny group. I find that for me, even though I'm pushing 40, I like the young people group and they still let me come, which is nice of them. Which is funny because I always go to the young people group and there's like this 90-year-old guy coming in and I'm like, all right, I'm good. I'm good. I'm not the old guy here. I'm not, but yeah, I find that one works for me. Um, when I do go to meetings and, find one that works. Some of them just will not resonate. For me, I actually like NA meetings a little bit better. Even though I'm alcoholic, I find that it just resonates a little bit different. Um, so find what works for you, even if it's, I don't know what is getting me. I have this dog that sheds, and everywhere we go, we're wearing half the dog on us, so it gets in my eyes and stuff. But yeah, find what works for you.
I have a dog that's snoring beside me. It's not me snoring, it's my dog snoring.
There
So
you go.
sorry about that, folks. The no humor thing that, alcoholism is a very serious
True.
disease.
Very true.
And so, I'm sure there's many meetings where even if there was humor at the beginning, maybe the humor goes away. A lot of people are having difficult times, and that's
Hmm.
one thing I try to stay open for and empathetic towards
Hmm.
is that people are going through tough things just because my life is okay. I still need to be aware of that.
Hmm.
Katie, you said I tried quitting so many times. When I finally submitted to God and prayed for help, He healed me instantly, no withdrawal whatsoever, which was another miracle. Well, that's awesome for
Hmm.
you. Good job.
Yep. And
Um,
I would also add an amendment. Yes, we're getting real. See, now we're being serious. To that, saying even if you do feel, for you, you've been sober a long time, so take that for what it is. But for someone getting sober right away, I know a lot of people have spiritual awakening right away. That's not to negate going to the doctor. Go anyway. And if you're in detox, even if you're like, hey, I'm healed, I know I'm healed. That's cool. Go to the doctor, get your detox stuff, just to make sure everything's okay anyway. No matter how you get sober, because I think that's important. Because alcohol, it causes a lot of shit in your body,
yeah.
and so just keep an eye on that.
You want to take one, Marcus?
Sure. Let's see. Let's see. 420 says, believe me, new, 9 days is a lot when you're constantly binge drinking. Yeah, it is. 9 days is huge. One day is huge. Deciding you don't want to drink anymore is huge. And even the guy up there who's like, hey, I had 36 days. I relapsed. Now I'm on 8. That's good. You're coming back. Keep keep coming back to sobriety. Keep working on it. Even if you do fail along the way, that's cool. You don't have to fail, but if you do, get back up on the horse and say, we're going. This is what we're doing. The worst thing you can do is be like, oh, well, I screwed up. Let's go back to drinking because forget that horse shit. Stay on the straight and narrow. Be like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay sober. All right. Let's see. Katie says, I recently gave my testimony on a friend's channel. I can message you the link if you want to listen to it. Well, Katie, if you want to post it as a comment to this video, everyone can listen to it. And I know you said earlier that you're starting your own channel about believers in recovery. I think that perspective would be good. If you ever want to share it here on one of our lives, you're more than welcome to. Just contact us and we'll show you how to do all that. It's usually by Skype. But you're more than welcome to do that. I think all perspectives are good because people are going to find what's gonna get them, and sometimes they'll be like, some people might be like, well, Marcus is nuts, but I like what Terry says, or vice versa, and do what works for you, and that's the key here is to give you guys options and education, and you take it and be like, well, that 15-minute thing works, that other thing Marcus said, whatever, weird. But the 15-minute works, and take what you can. All right, you want to take some others here?
Sure. Let's see, Megan, you said something really hard for me is having to face with a sober mind the path of destruction I've left behind me and the regrets and embarrassment of stupid things I've done and said and drank to not deal with it. Yes, I hear you.
Mhm.
That's a huge thing with most or many of us that quit drinking is the path of destruction we've left behind. I definitely left one,
Mhm.
and as I've gone through sobriety, I've tried to amend many of those things.
Mhm.
Some of the things I could not amend for, and I just have to live with it.
Yeah.
And I just move forward. And the best way that I found as far as trying to get over that path of destruction that I left behind is to live today sober and just be a good person. And that's all I can do.
I
I can only do
also,
what I can do now. Go ahead.
yeah, I can really relate to that because before I got sober, I had my dream house. I lived in it. I liked it. My wife hated it, but my kids and I liked it. Um, and I had everything like made. I was like, my business is okay, everything's good. And when I started drinking, we started like not doing good in the business because drinking is detrimental to your job. I don't. It's there's no label on the alcohol can that says that, but there should be. And I ended up selling my house completely drunk. Like I don't even remember it. And to me, I felt like I lost it. And when I first got sober, I was like afraid to go to the house because I'm like, man, that's the house that I lost. But I didn't really lose it. I just sold it. Um, and then the embarrassing things, like I fell in Vegas once, and luckily because I rented a big room for my conference, they like carried me up to it and took care of me. Like he even folded my clothes for me. I was like, dude, that's awesome. But that's shameful. That's embarrassing. It's like I fell. Here's this business guy who's running a business conference, and he like falls on the floor. And it wasn't like, just a stumble. It was like a boom, you know. Um, and there's a lot of regrets and embarrassment, but look at it as this. That's what any normal person would do with alcohol. Like you take the most upstanding, righteous person in the world, you give them enough booze, they're going to probably do what you did or worse, right? It happens. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean has it great. They're sitting there on the island, the lady and the Captain Jack, they're sitting there, and he's like, "Hey, you want some of this booze?" And she's like, "Well, I've seen booze turn the most respectable person into a vile pirate or whatever, and that's what it does. Like that's what it does. You're not special." I'm sorry to break it to you. You are not special to feel embarrassed. You're not special with what you did. Everyone does that with alcohol. And the best thing to do is forgive yourself because you got caught up in alcohol hysteria, as I like to call it. And alcohol made you do things. Now, there is some personal responsibility, absolutely. Like, I put the alcohol in my body, and for lack of a better scientific explanation, I did those things. And I heard of one guy who was like, I ended up outside naked somewhere. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty embarrassing. I don't think I'd like to deal with that. But that's what it does. It makes you think weird. It makes your brain tweak. And it
I've heard
affects your
that.
brain.
I've heard the naked thing a lot of times when
I know,
people.
like, where are all these people? I don't see them anywhere.
Okay.
My grandma, who passed about 2 months ago, she was alcoholic for 60 years, from the time she was like 15 till, I don't know, I had 15 and whatever. And she got sober in her 70s and was sober like 20 years when she died. But she did some crazy, like, the stories are funny when we're sitting there telling them, but you really look at it and it's really sad because it's like there's a person who was caught by alcohol, and I mean, it makes you unable to use certain functions of your body, makes you unable to think straight, and it's normal. And the best thing you can do is forgive yourself and move on, right? Dwelling on it's not going to change it. Looking at it's not going to change it. The path of destruction usually is repairable. We're humans. We're elastic. We bounce back. Um, and things are going to be all right. Like now, I'm like, okay, it took me 2 years to get another house, but I got one. It wasn't as big as the other, but I like it. I love it because I'm sober here, right? And it was weird because that house had a lot of memories in it. There was a lot of memories of being drunk, and the office I had built outside. I have memories of scraping my arm, reaching in the sheetrock where I used to hide my alcohol. That's pretty embarrassing. That sucks. But I know, hey, in my right mind, that's not really me. It's not me. I mean, sure, you give me some poison, and that's going to happen, but it's not me. And forgive yourself and love yourself and be like, hey, that was a time in my life. I'm glad it's over. And you know what? When I think about drinking to get rid of the regrets, you're going to have more regrets and you're going to have to think about more drinking for more. Best thing to do is forgive yourself and say, you know what? I'm a different person now. And live the change, live the amendment. A lot of people can go say sorry for stuff, but are you a living amendment? And I go through this with my kids, and they were around when I drank, and it's so hard to say sorry because it's like, how do you say sorry for something like that? It's devastating. Instead, I'm like, I'm going to live different each and every day. Every single day, I'm going to be different. I'm going to live different. And they see it, and they're like, that's better than words. Empty words mean nothing. What means something is getting up and living the change that you want to be. And that's the best thing to combat anything that you could have done in the past is, hey, you know what? I'm going to live the change. I'm going to be the
Right.
change.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So there's we're kind of running out of time, but I
Mm-hmm.
want to get to a couple of these.
Okay.
Ed Comstock, he knocked out 10 days, not really facing any cravings, but fatigue, anxiety, depression have been pretty constant. And yes, that's pretty constant. And, as we told Linda, if you are usually seeing a doctor is a good idea. They say that detox is normally 5 to 7 days, but detox from alcohol can last a lot longer. So it's always a good idea to at least get a doctor's opinion.
Yeah.
Axel, hi, back from Puerto Rico. Good to see you. Um, right here, Vera said, right, there is a strong movement for sobriety in Russia, but statistics are still sad. Only recently, age restriction from 16 to 18, and just now there is news of getting it to 21. I did
At
5 years.
5 years old, I think she said she drank at 5 years old or
I
something.
see. But
I
you
think.
said the
Pretty
one
young.
thing I saw in here that struck me was, but statistics are still sad. And yes, statistics are sad everywhere. Statistics can be manipulated no matter how.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll give you a statistic. Here's my statistic. If you don't drink today, you have a 100% chance of staying sober. That is an important statistic.
Mm-hmm.
So it may seem silly, but that's the key.
Yep.
As far as success statistics from AA or Life Ring or all these other things, it's just a matter of if you don't drink today and you can stay sober. That's
Yep.
it. Finding joy with living. This one's a good one too. Should I be concerned about my husband who is forced into intensive outpatient by his job as opposed to going on his own? Basically, I'm concerned about his mindset of having to. Whoops, I just scrolled past it. Of
Having to do it.
basically, you got it anyways. Um, I know a lot of people that were forced into sobriety and going to different programs by they were sentenced to these things by judges or by work or whatever, and sometimes it took, sometimes it didn't take,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a path. Me, I got a DUI, and did it get me sober? No, but it was my path towards sobriety. That was what begun my journey into sobriety, and I did eventually get sober, and that was a factor. So, I think it can only help.
Mm-hmm. And support him. Learn.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do is educate yourself about alcohol. Watch these videos, get a copy of some books, and learn what you can about alcohol and how it works. Because if you start to understand his brain, and I find that one of the most important things in sobriety is having someone who understands what you're going through. Right? Having someone who's like, yeah, I've been there. I know what that's like. And if you can be that for him, and if he finds that in the outpatient, I think that'll help. And just keep supporting him. Say, hey, you know, uh, how's this working for you? What do you think about this? Open it for dialogue. That would be my tip there.
Yep. Vera, you're saying, let's see. I even went to an English AA meeting by Red Square, Scottish, English accents, men. Interestingly, in Houston, there are so many from different countries, and some are natural stand up comedians. Yeah, I see a lot of that. But you know what? I think that's awesome. And I love when I travel, I go and I'll hit an AA meeting somewhere when I travel just because it's cool. It's really neat to see people from different countries that are or different areas that are going through the same thing I'm going through. And you know, we may have a slightly different story as to what we've gone through, but
Mhm.
really the feelings are pretty much the same. And that really helps me with my sobriety is understanding that, you know, I'm not alone.
Yep, for sure. All right. Let's see. She says something more about her AA meetings there. Yeah, find a meeting where you feel okay. Um, and it's okay. Some people are going to be weird. Like I found people that are just like I would never hang out with that guy outside a meeting. Um, but hey, you know what? They're going through it too, and maybe you'll find something that'll fit. Vera says her cats are the best companions. Cats and dogs are cool.
Yeah.
My dog understands me. She came up and like laid on my face with her face the other day, and I was just like, "Oh, I love you, dog." And then like 5 minutes later, she's like biting me and tearing something up, and I'm like, "Damn you, dog!" But we'll always
from,
have, you
from a
know.
sobriety standpoint, now I would never suggest somebody getting a dog as far as part of uh, part of their sobriety.
Hmm.
But for me, um, my dog gives me accountability, and I think that's more important is to get yourself some accountability, not to, you know, take it slow, but
Hmm.
it gives. I have to go walk him every day. This is a dog that needs exercise, so gets me out of the house, gets me exercise. It's good.
Cool.
Um, Nathan, you mentioned our channel in AA, and they didn't like the idea of not to attend meetings. Following you guys helps me more.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think it's a one or the other. You do whatever you need to do that's going to help you get sober.
Yeah, and
And
and just
for
as a side note, Terry is big in AA. He likes the AA meetings. I'm not so much. Not against him. I went to him in early sobriety. I just don't anymore. Um, so the perspectives, like whatever works for you, is fine. I know we get a lot of comments by some people in certain groups that just don't like the stuff, and that's cool. And if you don't like us and what we say doesn't really help, find something that does.
absolutely.
It doesn't matter. I don't care if you get sober by, you know, hand cutting your grass. If that works for you, that's cool. I doubt it will, but the moral of the story is find what works for you. Don't dog other people. If it works for them, that's cool.
Yep.
Um, and I don't look bad on anything. I want everyone to be sober in their own way, what works for them. And for me, it's education and it's learning and it's helping others is a big one. So, look for that. All right, cool.
My,
You want to
my
take up a
my brother's been sober for 30 years, and he does go to AA here and there, but he's definitely not. That's not a regular activity for him.
Yeah.
He has found other methods, and you know, and the one thing I look at with sobriety is I don't just want to be a non-drinker.
Hmm.
Sobriety for me is being happy and living a good life and
Absolutely.
satisfying life and just being content. And my brother is that as well without going to the meetings. So whatever works.
Yep. And don't be picky about where you get your truth. There might be some guy who, tells you not to watch us or tells you to watch something else or tells you to do a certain thing and you could be like, well, I really like watching those guys and maybe something that guy said is good too. So to each his own. Just don't be picky about where you get your truth because sometimes you'll learn a profound thing from a guy that you would think is like a total ass or something. So it just depends. And that was one thing I learned too. All right, cool. Let's see. Any other standout ones before we call it a wrap?
I think we're well. There's a few more comments. Let's see. Well, coffee man. When staying sober, looking at people that are drinking, I start thinking drinking looks stupid as inhaling propane.
And by
Okay,
disclaimer,
yes,
don't ever do that.
nah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Katie said drug people grate on my nerves now. It's humbling to remember I used to be that obnoxious person too. And yeah, you both are saying the same thing. Yeah, if I'm going to a party like the Christmas parties that all happened, I get there on time and I leave early. And when you're sober, you can tell when it's time to leave. And I do my polite thank yous to the host, and then it's time to go. I'm usually one of the first people to leave, where I used to be the last person to leave, or the person that they had to kick out. So,
And sober, you could tweak with people too. You could be like, "Do you know what you did last night?" No, I'm just messing with you.
all
But
right,
yeah,
I think we've made it through most of the comments.
All right, cool guys. Well, thanks for being here. Stay sober and do what you got to do. If you want to support the channel here, go over to talksober.com. Click the big button that says support the channel. If you want to get in contact with us, if you do want us to reactivate that little network thing where you guys can chat and everything, let me know, and I'll have my programmer fix that. Just type network if you guys want that. And that'll be over at talksober.com. I'll put a big link on the page for it. And you guys can talk to each other, get to know each other, give each other help, whatever, throughout the week when we're not here. And sometimes we'll pop in there as well to chat with you guys too. But till then, stay sober and have fun. And yeah, any last minute wisdom for today, Terry?
Yes, the number one mistake is drinking when you're trying to not drink. So don't drink.
All right, guys.
That's
Thanks.
simple.
All right,
Keep
thanks. And we'll see you next time. Hop over to talksober.com and let us know how we can help you. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.